Hello and welcome to the Ferret Business Podcast. I am your host, Yemmy the Ferret, aka Yemmy. And with me today is it's actually my first interview with a website creator. I'm talking with a guy. He works on a website that highlights indie game developers and the people who play their games. That's right, it's Razor from Razor's Edge. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Jimmy. It's a pleasure to be here.
All of his social medias will be down in the description below, including Twitter, his YouTube channel, and a link to www.razorsedgegames.org. So make sure you go check all that out. And we will begin with, how are you today?
Doing good. Tomorrow's Friday, so it's going to be a good weekend. Forecast is good.
Always glad when Friday rolls around, I'll tell you what.
Me too, definitely. Always excited.
Well, I gotta tell you, I got an injury on my finger today. I cut my finger with my trusty knife, and I was just being dumb, you know. I sliced my finger open, and it got me thinking. Have you ever had any major injuries? Like, I guess slicing my finger isn't major, but you know, have you had any injuries like where, you know, oh, my foot's the wrong direction or anything like that?
Yeah. So my daughter rides equestrian. She's an English hunter jumper, and her horse stepped on my foot. I couldn't remove my foot because she was in an area where the horse would have got spooked. So I had to stand there with 1,200 pounds on my foot in a steel-toed boot, which bent the steel.
Oh man.
And I still streamed that same day.
Dang, that's dedication.
You got to do what you got to do.
I actually fractured my my right foot. It was the last day of it was the last full day of school for 6th grade. I was in elementary school, and it was the last recess. At the end of the day, it was a bonus recess that we all got. And I remember, I don't know what the hell happened, but I remember the recess bell rang. We were all going to line up, and I started running, and all of a sudden, I must have stepped inside a pit or something, like something with a root inside it, because I twisted my ankle, and then, boy, I don't know, the foot was fractured, and I remember going back inside school, and I was like, my foot doesn't feel right, and my teacher's like, oh, just sit down. I'm like, okay. And I took off my shoe, and I'm like, my foot really hurts. And she's like, well, walk to the nurse's office. I'm like, what the heck? So I walked to the nurse's office, and she's like, yeah, you're going to have to go to the hospital. So that's probably the biggest injury I've ever had was just, fracturing the foot there. But I don't think it's as bad as getting a horse stepping on it. That's for sure. That's for sure.
Yeah. I think they're pretty equal. I will call it a draw on that.
So you have a daughter and a wife, correct?
Yeah. One daughter, one wife, just
so
one.
How did you and your wife meet?
We met on a dating site way back when they weren't so popular. It was kind of a frowned upon, and now it's pretty much common. People meeting online, and it was interesting. So we had a few dates and dated for a while, and then ended up married, and we've been married now for almost 14 or 15. After 10 years, you stop counting. But our daughter's 12. We always just times 2 or add 2 to that, and pretty much come up with our number.
That's awesome. Yeah, I know a lot of marriages don't last as long as 1 year, let alone 15. So congratulations.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Yeah, my actual game development kind of killed the first. So there's a long history behind that. I don't know if you want to hear all that.
Well, let's talk a little bit more about you yourself, and then we'll get into the website and talk about how it was birthed into being.
Well, that's actually pretty much a segue into how it was born. So I started out as a military vet, not a lot of skill sets, and ended up just doing networking, and I was doing a MUD, which is basically a text online game. and a couple of the devs that were working under a company called Red Eye were working on a game. So they knew I'd done some Quake mods, and they were looking for someone, basically people who had worked with Quake mods and to help build this game. So we found out that there was a copyright against the name, so they changed the name from Red Eye, and the publisher was Sony. So you probably know the title by now. It was EverQuest. So I worked with that team for 2 years in development until release, and it was brutal. You're working on someone else's game, and so after that, the producer at the time, Brad McQuaid, decided he was going to take some of resources, Jeff Butler and some other developers, and form Sigil, which worked on a game called Vanguard. I don't know if you remember that one.
It sounds familiar, but I can't place my finger on it.
Yeah, it was an old MMO. So it actually, he ended up selling that to Sony, and everybody ended up back in Sony. So a lot of us left, and I went indie. At that point, I decided, you know what, I'm going to take 4 of my closest friends, and we're going to write a game. And so this was about the time Blizzard was working on WoW. They were in a beta stage. So we were competing with them. We basically took out about 150,000 between the 4 of us, and started developing on an old engine that was used for Tribes called Torque. The developers of Tribe actually bought the rights, and it was the first asset store engine that you see now with Unity and Unreal. And we started to build our game on that. It was also going to be an MMO. And at the end of development, we were in beta. I was just starting to send out beta tester NDA agreements, and the coder up and quit. So
Wow.
well, yeah. And what we found out is this coder was his coding was great, but his commenting was horrible. So no one understood his code. It was uncommented. Nobody could understand the instructions. Nothing made sense. So we reached out to some outlets, back then they called them BBSs, and some forums. There was no Kickstarters or anything like that.
Right.
And no NDDB. And we started talking with some developers, and basically the lowest quote we got was 15,000. And by then we're all broke, working jobs, and so we abandoned the whole project. So I completely got out of indie development and really stopped gaming. Just was pretty disgruntled against the whole industry at that point.
Yeah, it would be too.
Yeah, it was really frustrating. So about a year ago, a game came out. I met some people on IndieDB. It was kind of nice to chat with indie developers on IndieDB, talking about their games. And one of the things, we made a mistake. We didn't know how to market. A lot of indie developers, they put the game in first, and then they marketing and promotion and all that's an afterthought. So that's usually the position that an indie is in. And so here I talked to this developer, and he was a single developer working on a game, released it for a very low price. It made immediate success and trended on Steam. But because he sold it so low with no funding behind it, he was quick to go through all of the money he had made off the original sales. So he went to work on another game and came back. And so I was helping him. His moderator had quit, and the forums got really toxic on Steam. And, it was like reliving my whole experience again, but I was trying to help him, mentor him. He went through a Unity upgrade, helped him with some models, because I do 3D modeling. And and it kind of started from there. So I created the YouTube channel. I started covering all the patches, everything that was coming, sneak peeks, and that's sort of the birth of the YouTube channel. If I'm boring you at any minute, just let me know.
Oh no, it's all very interesting.
Okay, great. So, and needless to say, that game was falling apart. The coder is sort of missing in action, and I started helping another developer. If you know the title, Computer Tycoon. So I helped him work on.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I helped. Same advice. Just talked a little bit about the marketing. Went through struggles with him. Then started working with the developers of Animalika, and again doing promotion videos, and basically just using the channel strictly. And about, I don't know, 7 months ago, I decided a website with an idea of not only featuring indie games, and I actually created a Twitter account at the same time. But I decided to also put another page on there for all my friends, all 4 of us. So 4 channels, and about, I don't know, 5 games with developers that I was working with, and it just sort of grew. Now there's over, I don't know, 400, maybe 500 games on there, and the media page is growing. I keep getting more and more channels that, I look for streamers and media coverage from people who cover indie games and are indie advocates that really show off the highlights of the game and do repeat videos. So they're not just trend recorders. They actually do 30 plus episodes of a single game. And I don't really look at their sub count. I look at the quality of their videos, how they talk about the developers, because you have to remember, with indie there's always going to be bugs and issues, and one patch can really turn the forums on Steam very toxic. So you need really good video people to keep sticking with the game, working through the mix. Even though the game's mixed, they're still covering it, keeping that hype, keeping people looking at the game, because honestly they really look at the forums. I look at my channel, and about 90% of the views come from Steam. So that says a lot. So they really look for those top videos that are at the top. And if you're doing 30 episodes, you're going to fill their page with coverage.
Yeah.
That's what players are going to see. And they're going to see episode 1, episode 2, and, so forth. And those are the kind of content providers that I wanted on my page. And so we've just sort of built it out. It's just sort of taken a life of its own. The content providers will be a game that they like, that I'm actually promoting off the site, and they'll retweet the post, and it's really worked out well. Some of the developers have actually followed them. So I looked at it as a community. We're all working together with the same goal. They're growing their channels, and the indie developer is trying to make a success from their game. Because the bottom line, through talking with several PR friends I've made that are PR and marketing, is that out of all the games released on Steam, only 1% of all indie games are successful. So that means 99% of the games that get put on Steam end up in failure. So I wanted to, if I could make a difference and just change that, keep that hype, talk to developers a little bit about marketing, how much money they need to have up front before they even get to Kickstarter, before any type of crowdfunding, that they have that much capital set up to help market their game and build a lot of hype around the game before it even gets to Steam. Because really, that game's only going to be on Steam for a day. New release.
Yeah,
you know?
really.
Yeah, really.
And it basically, with indie, if you put it in as early access, there's a lot of stipulations. They're called credits that they can actually say an update has occurred. They're really tied into what so you're always looking for ways to get your game back on the front page of Steam, because that's where all the money's made. So the process now is learning the ins and outs, and you've got curator groups out there that say no Gotti, and they've got 170,000 followers. They don't even own the game. That's some of the things that I've talked with developers. We're trying to get Steam to change their model. Not being if you don't own the game, you shouldn't be able to curate it. And you certainly shouldn't be able to put some advertisement of come join our Discord and chat about this game. So that's sort of where I'm at right now, and I am working with a few big games that are coming out. And that's the funnest part is actually working with the developers and talking with them and kind of gauging where they're at based on the curator reviews, how many page hits they get versus how many sales that turn in a day. So I'm really learning, what a PR agent would do, because quite frankly, we didn't have money for a PR for our game. And a lot of these indie companies don't. Because they put the game first. So that's really why I started the whole thing. And so far it seems to be working somewhat. I don't know if I'm making a difference, but I'm sure trying.
Yeah, I think you're doing an awesome job with everything. I'm always scrolling through your website, seeing what's new, especially when you post things on Twitter. I mean, I think it's a good thing that you're doing to help out these people, because I mean, really, they need the help, because it's an indie developer, and the AAA, they kind of own the market. There's no real room for indie developers nowadays.
No, there's really not.
I did have a question about the Steam Greenlight. Do you think that more or less hurts games when they start out on Steam Greenlight? Because most of those games are broken. Maybe they're terrible ideas. They're terrible in every way, but they are considered indie games. Do you think that do you think Steam Greenlight hurts these games?
Well, I thought they were actually going to eliminate the Steam Greenlight program. Now they have a new program. Basically, you pay $150, I think. I'm not sure what the exact price is. And you can pretty much put any title you want. And so what you end up with, exactly what you talked about, those are called asset flips, where they basically just either they take a game that they previously released the year before, change the title, change a little bit of the mechanics, not a lot of coding behind it, and resell it, and they can do that endlessly. And so between asset flips, early access, fake curator reviews, and just a general untrust from the Steam community, because they're really leery about buying an early access game, because they're worried about vaporware. Are they going to abandon the game? Are they going to finish it? So, and that's twofold too, because basically a developer, if they're broke and the game's not selling, typically there's nothing driving them to finish the game. It's not selling. They go, basically get frustrated. They're dealing with, they for months they've answered questions on the forums. I'm still working, or worse, they don't answer at all. So the community is really it has definitely hurt the indie market, and I think it's only going to continue to get worse, because I mean, if you look at today, there were almost 40 games that came out today alone. And I looked through them, and they're either free, 99 cents, all the way up to $40. And you really don't know, based on, you're looking for videos on YouTube, you're looking for anything on this, the history, the publisher, the developer, how many games they've released. A lot of buyers don't know how to do that. They go to the video, they'll watch the trailer. You can make a game look really good on the front page. And they just basically take all the sales that they get from that first day, and that's it. They run. So, I think it's definitely created a very toxic environment within the Steam community with the early access and with indie development as a whole.
Yeah, with the cinematics, I always wait for actual gameplay from games. Like, a lot of games at E3, they were just cinematic trailers. There really wasn't any gameplay, or there's just like, Elder Scrolls 6 pops up on the screen, and it's like everyone goes crazy. It's like, I want to see some gameplay before I judge a game on whether I'm going to buy it or not. I'm not going to put down, $60 on a game to pre-order it from, wherever, just solely based on, the cinematic, because you can fake cinematics. I mean, we saw Battlefront from EA. I mean, it literally took a nosedive with that after the cinematic was done, and they people played the game. It literally was just like the worst thing I ever fucking played, to be honest.
Right. It happens all the time. Both AAA and indie, people buy into the hype of the trailer, and the publisher, they know what they're doing. They know how to do it, especially when they're a bigger studio and they can afford a publisher and a PR. They know exactly how to get them in magazines and in different shows, to build a lot of hype around a game, yet there's no fun factor. There's nothing new. It's the same game, or you feel like, it's completely repetitive. But the problem is, and this is the other issue with Steam, you really only have 30 minutes to make a decision whether you like a game or not. But, otherwise you can't get a refund. So what they'll do, they buy the game, and instead of just refunding and running, move to the next one, they leave that negative review. Now, later on, that's good in ways. It's also bad, because if it actually is a good game, but you need more than 30 minutes of gameplay to figure that out, or maybe they had a graphics card. Engines like Unity have trouble with Intel chipsets on video cards. Indies don't have the resources to test every video. They're not a AAA studio. They don't have hundreds of beta testers to test every combination of... Go ahead.
Let me ask you this. You're talking about the glitches and the beta testers and stuff like that. What about the games from AAA companies that come out, like Batman Arkham Knight? When that was released, it had frame rate issues. It had gameplay issues off the wall on the computer and on the PlayStation. What does that say about those AAA studios if an indie developer could easily, or they could have the same problems, but if it's a AAA developer, you don't expect them to have those problems, right?
No, you wouldn't, and that's why I actually stick with indies. AAA studios have the resources and they know better. That's just outright what I call new car sales tactics. They put the shine on it, they get the hype out there, and they don't put a lot of effort in the game. And then they really don't care. They just put it out there, and they've made their money off pre-sales, and they do very little to make it any better. So that's really an insult to the industry as a whole, the gaming industry. And it happens, but they shouldn't be doing it. And you're exactly right. We see it time and time again. The best thing you can do is memorize those publishers, and it's like, I'll never pre-order, I'll just never buy a game from that developing team or anything that publisher picks up. But again, Steam it's impulse buying. You get these stuff that's new, looks good, looking for a game for the weekend, and they pick something up, and they're really quick to judge. And I think part of the things, and one of the feedback comments I gave to Steam was, why can't users, so as far as the the reviews, curators have an option for information only. Now, when you put a thumbs down, basically, and you bought the game, it counts against the game. Where you see that very positive, mostly, that's all based on people who have purchased the game. Keys, gifts, those don't count. They don't count towards their scoring at all. So if you give out 200 keys for a game for press copies and preview copies to players, and then beg them for reviews, it has no impact on their game whatsoever as far as that scoring. Because again, you want to get back on the front page. That's where you want to be. You want to live on that page as long as you can, to get as much money as you can, because it's early access. You got to have money to fund the game. You got to finish it. And you're going to start finding issues. It's inevitable. It happens. Early access games, any indie game is going to have problems that were unforeseen. Now, with these AAA studios and these frame rates right off the bat across that many that many players, that's just an outright lie. I mean, there's no way they could miss that. No way. And I cut them no slack. I don't play any AAA studio games anymore. I won't buy one. I refuse. So I've completely converted to 100% indie just because I understand, from an indie perspective, what you go through family-wise, monetarily. I mean, I lost a house. I had to file bankruptcy. I mean, I've lived it. I can totally sympathize with what they're going through. And, they're just trying to see their dream game, and their dream is to make it to a bigger studio and release bigger titles, move forward. And, that success rate's really low. So, but yeah, it's definitely something needs to be changed, and I don't know what it is, but if a user could just leave an information instead of a thumbs down, it wouldn't hurt their score, but in the same time, it would allow that user to leave the feedback. Look, I tried to play this game. I was on the Intel chipset, or maybe just, the game's not ready, and still not hurt the developer. Because that thumbs down just literally kills their, the game. Any possibility they had of being successful, the more it happens. And I'd really like, if I had one wish today, it would be an informational for the buyer, because I think they would use it. They just want to tell other people. They don't want to hurt the game. They just want to warn players, hey, this game was terrible, but I only played it for 30 minutes. That still doesn't hurt the game, and it gives you your ability to vent out that, hey, I refunded. Because, I mean, they are real quick to instead of talking to the devs and asking for help, because they realize I'm not going to get my money back.
Right.
So the trust factor is gone. So that's my one wish, is that Steam would do that.
Last thing for today. Now, I've been watching an indie game called Steamboat Alliance for a while, made by Sly Fox Studios, and I met them actually at PAX in Seattle. Have you ever gone to a convention like that and actually met and talked with the indie developers in person?
Actually, no, and it's something that I wanted to do. So I'm in cybersecurity, so most of the conferences I go are related to that. So as far as my time being a dad with all the competitions with her riding, it's kind of taken a back seat. But I have a good friend that she's her name's Rachel Mack. She's a publisher. She's a PR for indie games, and she talked about how amazing these conferences are. And I've seen other people from Mixer and some other big streamers that have gone, and it just looks fantastic. I mean, I would love to go to one, but none of them are really close to where I'm at, unfortunately. So it's something that I want to do in the future. Most of my conversation with developers are like in Discord or Skype. it is in person, and and they can screen share. I can watch footage of her, or play a demo copies, things like that. But it's not like just going to meeting them, which is something that I'd really like to do, because there's been some great developers that I've worked with and helped promote in the past, and I would love to meet the teams. They're just amazing people.
All right, well, that is all the time I have today with Razor, aka Razor's Edge. He runs his website. He's a very knowledgeable and experienced guy, so make sure you check out his channel. Well, not his channel, but check out his website and his channel and his Twitter. And like I said, all those links will be down in the description below, so make sure you check them out. Is there anything else you want to add before we end the podcast?
Oh, no, I just really want to thank all the people that do cover indie games on all the different platforms that are out there. What you're doing, you may not think you're helping, but you truly are, and it's a lot of work. I know how hard and how difficult it is, and worrying about subs and things like that as you're growing your channel. Don't watch those. Just go with it, keep with your format, and watch your metrics and your analytics, and get real followers. The sub for subs and things like that, just stay away from that stuff. And you're going to be successful. You're going to build your own communities. You're going to have some real fans with the real comments, and your view times are going to go up. And just really stick with it. And then for the indie developers, I can't say enough about those guys and gals and those teams, because their success, when they're successful, I'm thrilled, and when they fail, I kind of relive that whole thing that I went through. So that'd be my final message, is just that I love them all. I think we're a community, and we really have to work together to make indie more successful, and then for you to keep this up, because man, I love this channel. Your interviews are hilarious. I've had so much fun watching your older ones, so I really enjoy them, and your channel is going to do great.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that so much. Well, hey, there's some awesome, powerful words from our friend Razor. Anyways, I am your host, Yemmy the Ferret, and this has been another episode of the Ferret Business Podcast.